Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Schenker, founder and co-editor-in-chief of Informulo, a website and print magazine about the global tech sector. And as mentioned, here with me today, I have to my immediate right, Alan Boehme from Coca-Cola Accelerator, and Carlos Espinal from Seedcamp. So we're here to talk about how accelerators are evolving. Until really recently, startups really had a choice of, either applying to some kind of a generic accelerator, working on an MVP, and then praying that when they got out, they would have some sort of follow-on funding. Or they could go and try and work with a corporate, but that often was a very frustrating process because you could pilot with them for a really long time and walk away without any money or any business. So things have moved on from then, and we're going to talk about that today. And I want to start with you, Carlos, and talk about how Seedcamp has evolved and what you're doing now.
Cool, thanks, Jennifer. How many of you have heard of Seedcamp before today? Excellent. It's exactly to you guys that I wanted to sort of bring you up to speed. We've been around since 2007, and in 2007, things were very, very different. The amount of traction that was necessary for a startup to be interesting if they had a big idea for a follow-on investor was definitely a lot lower than today. And the reason is, today there's so many more companies that are creating amazing things that a lot of Series A investors and later are waiting to see far more traction. Seedcamp started with that vision of being that first round of capital that investors and founders are relying on to get to product market fit. And when we started, yes, it was a smaller amount of money, but in today's circumstances and the pressure that you guys have in building a global company, we've ramped that up over the course of the last year. We've made 24 seed investments along with other investors, and we've basically taken the platform that we developed over the first 7 years of our operation and scaled that so that founders who are now working with us are having access to global investment based in the Valley, based in New York and in Boston, and moving away from the traditional accelerator model. So we are the first round of capital rather than the traditional accelerator 3-month type structure that everybody's heard of.
Thanks, Carlos. So let me turn to you now, Alan, to talk a little bit about how you're changing the view of corporate venturing.
Sure. So thank you. So I think everybody's heard of Coca-Cola. I'm going to assume here in the audience. One of the problems in working with a large company, be it Coca-Cola or any company, is that it's very complex. There's a lot of legal people. There's a very, very difficult procurement process. And what we've found in the past is that when a startup approaches a company like Coca-Cola, the one thing that's really missing is the startup cannot tell a story as to why they should be engaged with Coca-Cola. So about a year and a half ago, we decided, how can Coca-Cola help the startup community? And Coca-Cola is an iconic brand. It's been around for 129 years. I'd like to say we're probably the top marketing brand in the world. We're certainly the most recognized brand in the world. So we've taken our marketing program that we teach our own product managers on a global basis, and we've turned it around, and we started a program called The Bridge with the first implementation in Tel Aviv, and have another one coming into the US in 2016, looking at Latin America for 2016, and it's all about teaching people how to tell a story. Tell a story to attract a company, tell a story to attract investors, tell a story to attract employees. How do you position your product? How do you brand your product? All of these intangibles, which ends up becoming probably the most important thing in getting a large brand to work with you. We partner with the accelerators, we partner with the incubators, we partner with the investors, we partner with the angels, we partner with the VCs. We're not involved in taking any equity. We don't take any claims against IP. It's really a community effort so that we can help grow startups that can solve problems that we have, that can also solve problems in business and grow a business in general. So we're looking at it as a commercialization engine, and that's what we're trying to bring to the table.
I think it would be good to explain the kind of technologies that Coke itself is involved in, or interested in.
So I think everybody knows about Coca-Cola as a product. But every year we select some themes. What people don't realize, we're the largest supply chain company in the world, 750,000 vehicles on the road every day. If you read our annual report, you'll see that our Treasury Department produces over $1 billion a year in profit, which makes us a very, very large bank. We are probably one of the largest spend in marketing, with almost $5 billion a year in marketing. So what we're looking for is disruptive technologies. We're looking for differentiators in retail, in marketing, supply chain, even health and wellness, in order for us to be able to create opportunities with our customers, the big box stores, the small retailers, the restaurants, and do something across the entire globe.
Now, the startups here cannot apply directly to the Coca-Cola Accelerator, right? I mean, they have to be recommended.
Yes, all of the people that come into the program are recommended by accelerators, they're recommended by the investors, they're recommended by alumni from our program. And we do this in order to make sure that we're having a screening process. We end up with about 150 to 200 applicants through the referral process. We get it down to 75 for in-person interviews, and we select 10. And the program runs for 7 months. So we count on people such as yourself in order to help us complete the ecosystem.
So, okay, you've talked about how the companies get into your program. Can you talk about what's happened to companies that have already gone through the program? You're on the second cohort, right?
We're in the second program. In the first program, the first 10, 17 pilots in 14 countries. One of those companies we announced last week, completely unintended as part of the program, we made a strategic investment in. We followed some outside investors and decided to join in because we thought it was such a great idea and they were getting so much traction in the company. There's 2 other contracts that are under negotiation for round 1, and round 2 just ended. We had a showcase yesterday in London in the community there for 150 people from the community in Europe came in to meet a number of the other startups, and many of them already have contracts with Coke and are now getting contracts with many other companies across Europe as well.
You're also doing pilots with some of the companies that have gone through the program, right?
Yes, we're piloting. Our goal is, if possible, we want everybody in our program to be able to get a pilot. But again, it takes the accelerators, the incubators, and others to help get them ready so they can be in the program. We try to be the finishing school to move them forward. So we really rely on professional investors such as Carlos to help us understand who is going to be the winners and who's going to be the losers and who can you build a business around. We're not in the business of picking winners and losers. Carlos does this for a living. He has 8 years experience with his organization. I want to be able to leverage his knowledge and add value to his investments and other people's investments along the way.
Maybe that's a great segue to ask you, Carlos. What kind of companies are attracting the bigger rounds now from Seedcamp? How do you choose those companies? And can you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah. I mean, as we mentioned, the explosion of seed as a sector and is a direct correlation to the amount of people that have decided that building a startup and changing something they're very passionate about is the way that they want to go. And we've seen this across different sectors. We've seen this around fintech. We've seen it in property tech. We're increasingly seeing it in insurance tech. And the way that we look at it, the way that we make our decisions is we think about a sector that needs disruption. There's ones that are kind of slightly maybe ahead of their time at the moment, like artificial intelligence. I think we'll get there, but a lot of the stuff right now is very nascent. And then there's other stuff that's right here, right now. For example, property. Property is one of these areas where it's been usually held by very few players in an industry. Those have huge barriers to entry for any new people, and you have startups that are coming up with these great ideas around how to disrupt that. One of those, for example, Property Partner, it was when it was pitched to us, it was pre-launch. But what made it very different in terms of how we could help it, and what made it interesting as a bet was that it was a company that excited other investors to contribute as part of a meaningful round so that founder had a chance to really tackle the market. Because the problem is that if you're underfunded as a company, you're likely not going to be able to execute on no matter how good the idea is. And so what's changed from 2007 to now is that now with as much marketing costs are required to stand above the fray in terms of a brand, you need to have this larger syndicate, and that's part of what we do. And with Property Partner, the company that I was mentioning, when they launched, they were able to sort of have a more strategic rollout of approaching customers, and they've been very successful since in providing access for people who want to join a property ladder and say, I want to own some real estate and benefit from the returns of real estate in ways that previously weren't possible. So it's a big idea. Big idea requires the money for both to approach the founders, but also requires some knowledgeable people around the table.
And so going back to this whole idea of, sort of incorporating the knowledge into what the startup does. We had an interesting discussion earlier about how sometimes you will see a certain technology and you'll be interested in working with that company, but maybe they don't have a business model, or maybe you'll see a business application for something that the startup is looking at as more of a in a different light.
Yeah, we had two examples of that just recently. One company came to us and applied into the program with augmented reality technology, and they were very much focused on the consumer market. It's a good market, but I can tell you just from my experience, and I live in the Silicon Valley, and from my experience, very few companies have made any money in augmented reality, and the investors have made even less money in augmented reality. But when we took a look at what this company had, we were able to create a commercial opportunity so they could go after the enterprise space. And in doing so, they actually won a competitive RFP with the Coca-Cola company and immediately were awarded a contract for some product. The problem was they were so early on, they hadn't thought about their business model, how to sell to the enterprise. So we actually had to reach out to our friends of ours that are investors and VCs and others and say, would you mind coaching them to help them understand what they need to do in order to create a business model that would be investable in the future? And we had another issue, and to be honest with you, we invited another company in. There was two founders. There was a senior founder and a junior founder. And we told the senior founder, you've got the wrong guy. This other person is going to hold you back. And we said, we're going to bring you both into the program anyway, and we'll work with you. 6 months afterwards, the senior founder let the other guy go because he wasn't getting any traction, hired somebody else. He actually came back around, did a pivot. So I always say persevere, persevere, persevere. He pivoted his product, and he found a new market opportunity within our company and also within a lot of major corporations as well. And we're now helping him in the door in these places because he finally listened. But sometimes you have to learn by your mistakes as well.
So you've talked about how startups can benefit from their relationship with corporates, how now there's somebody in the market filling the gap for funding after they get out of that accelerator early seed stage. What would you guys recommend for the startups in this audience? Like when they choose an accelerator program, what should they look for?
So first of all, maybe one thing we could do is take a poll here. How many of you just started a company within the last 3 months? Okay, with last 6 months? How many of you are like 4 founders and less? Okay. So the thing is, with regards to acceleration, and obviously, would love to hear your thoughts as well. The way that we've seen it is that there's a process very early on where the founders will go through a lot of idea back and forth, trying to figure out what the right product is, figure out whether people get along, whether or not, especially if people have met in hackathons, that tends to be a problem in terms of the team cohesion. That process from the moment you came up with an idea to the moment when you figure out who your team members are going to be and what that initial product is, who your initial customer is, all that stuff is the ideal time to be an accelerator. The moment that you have any vestiges, any components there that have coagulated and that you want to accelerate that, that's kind of like when we like to get involved and help amplify that so we can help you raise a proper seed round or a Series A. Now, in terms of the choosing the right accelerator, these days there's a couple of ways of doing that. One of them is you find somebody who's going to strategically benefit your company. So in the case of F&B and some of the relationships that Coca-Cola might have, and you can share the kinds of companies that you're looking in, but you see other programs around the world which allude to a relationship, a very deep relationship with a brand. For example, the Disney Accelerator in that brand, the Barclays Accelerator and that fintech brand. So if you're very much attracted to having those kinds of shortcuts into those relationships, that's one way of going about it. Alternatively, you can go to YC, you can go to some of the local players that are more geographically focused, or have a very knowledgeable alumni base that can help you, because so much of the value you're going to get is the people you're surrounded with.
I think I'd just like to add, it's about the people. And end of the day, whether it's your investors, whether it's an accelerator, whether it's an incubator, you have to have a good feeling that you're going to be able to work with the people, work within the structure that's in place, because you can't fight the structure. Think the structures are there for a reason, they're proven, they work, but it gets down to the people. If you don't have a good gut feel at the end of the day that it's the right place for you, it's not the right place. Even if it's the one that's going to give you the most money, even if it's the one that you think is going to have the best connections, if you don't have a personal connection with the mentors, if you don't have a personal connection with the staff and the management, it's the wrong place. People, to me, outweighs everything.
Let me end, because we're almost out of time, with asking you both, how do you measure the success of your own programs?
So I measure success by how many millionaires I can enable to create. Pretty much.
Pretty simple. Okay.
And success for us is measured a couple ways. One is the number of pilots that we can create in a 6-month period of time. And by a pilot means you have a minimal viable product that's working and it's tested in the market. Second measure of success is, can I get one contract out of 10? And can I actually get one of the business units or a function in the company to sign a contract and provide money back to the participant in our program? To date, we've had real good success. We're ahead of the 1 out of 10. We're in the 2 and 3 out of 10 range. But we do know in general that most startups fail, and that we're playing the odds. We're working with our partners. So if we get the 1, 2, or 3 successes, anything beyond that, it's just an unbelievable home run for us, and that's what we're looking for. So minimum on that side. And of course, we're looking for value. If somebody can come to me with an idea that can show me how I can recruit 500,000 new trials in my product, and it works, that wins. If somebody can take 1% out of my supply chain costs, I'll tell you, they're going to have a next billion-dollar company, because they can go and do it for all these other companies as well. They win and I win. So it's a partnership, and it's a win-win is what we go for.
Okay. So with that, I'd like to ask you to give a nice round of applause to Alan and Carlos. Hope you all found that very useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.